And we are back with the Big Money Big Daddy Show. Today, Mark Conley, I am flying solo and I'm having fun doing it. So, we are talking about your circle of wealth, how to accumulate money. What are the three types of money? We discussed accumulated money. That's the investments that you have or that you are building towards, like maybe a 401k. We talked about lifestyle money, how you're living your life right now. In other words, are you saving enough money now so that you can continue to enjoy and have a happy life in retirement as well? And then lastly, we started touching on this concept of transferred money as well, and money that was leaving your financial plan that was happening unknowingly and many times is unnecessarily happening. And we wanted to go into some examples here in this segment really on what those particular things were. But I was talking to our producer, Leslie, and I had some interaction with her, and we were thinking about lifestyle money. And I had said in the last segment, you got to save 20% of your gross income. That it should be the goal. And sometimes I think people hear that and they go, okay, well, then I'm not doing anything because I'm saving 3%, not 20%. So oh, well, I'm doomed, forget it, doing nothing. That is not the right way to do this, okay? Number one, we don't know if you need to save 20%. I was giving a general number. It depends on your income. It depends on what you've saved. You need a plan. That's my point. You better measure the number. But then number two, I don't care what you're saving right now. You can do more. That I do know. And how do you go about doing that? It's actually very simple. You just make a commitment, number one, that you're really going to do it. And then number two, you implement the commitment slowly. For instance, if you're saving 5%, you need to get to, let's say you run the plan, you need to get to 15. Well, then you go, okay, well, I want to try to do that over 3 years. So I'm going to increase once a quarter. I'm going to add a 1% increase to my 401k, my investment account, whatever it is that you're doing. And you'll notice that it's little bites that you adjust to, and then a little bite that you adjust to. How do you eat an elephant? That's right, one bite at a time. And before you know it, you get where you're supposed to be. You don't stick your head in the sand and do nothing, which is that's apparently the American way, I guess. But I'm hoping that you listen to the show so you are committed to doing something. So I did just want to bring that up before I jumped into transferred money. So transferred money, what exactly is that? So think about this. Some examples might be taxes. It could be costs in your portfolio. Insurance costs is a big one that we'll see quite a bit. The problem is we kind of get it, but I don't think we fully get it. Let me explain what I mean. If you pay, an extra $5,000 in taxes to the IRS, then you had to, according to the laws that are available to you, okay? Sometimes you might think, I paid $5,000 too much. I wish I would have known that, whatever. Hired a new CPA, maybe it won't happen again. But it cost you a lot more than $5,000 because you're not thinking about it from a long-term planning perspective. It wasn't just the $5,000 that you gave the IRS. It's the fact that now you didn't have the $5,000 invested to gain whatever it might have gained over time. $5,000 at, whatever rate of return you can reasonably get, 5, 6, 7%, whatever it is for you. Over 20 years and 30 years, it starts to get to be a pretty big number. We call that opportunity cost. Everything has an opportunity cost associated with it. And we accept some of these opportunity costs, but some of them are unacceptable. And that's part of a good financial planner is they can look at your total financial plan and really figure out what areas that there are wealth transfers happening that don't need to be there. So if we look at the major areas, we've got protection, we've got expenses, and we've got taxes. So what I'm going to do for the rest of the show is I'm going to walk through some of these particular areas. So let's hit first on protection items. What areas are these? Well, this is your auto insurance and your disability insurance and your homeowners and your major medical health insurance, liability, umbrella protection. This is money that you might be paying for wills and trusts, or maybe you need long-term care, or maybe you've got term life insurance, okay? You need protection. I mean, you've heard on this show that one of the key elements of a good financial plan is eradicating exposure to financial threats. And of course, these items I just listed out are part of helping eradicate the exposure of the financial threats that are out there, no doubt about it. But I think it comes down to more of how you structure these things. I'll give a simple example that applies to people I've sat down that, make 100,000, and it applies to people making $1 million a year. Doesn't matter. And I see this one all the time. You've got your auto insurance, your homeowner's insurance, normally together, and you've got some premium that you're paying every year, and it might be offering you, say, hypothetically, $100,000 of coverage if something was to go wrong. Well, when you think about that, and you're like, okay, if I got in a car wreck, number one, with all these nice cars on the roads, could I actually get in a wreck that I did more than $100,000 worth of damage to one or multiple cars? Or number two, what if it was bad enough they had to call Life Flight? Could that potentially cost more than that? Well, you're going to realize real quick it can. And guess what? If it goes over those amounts, you're on the hook. Now, how do you get forced to pay that? What happens is the other insurance company will sue you, and they will get the money from you if you were at fault. So what people don't realize is you could add an umbrella policy. So add an extra $1 million of potential coverage to your plan, and this stuff is super cheap. You just call up the insurance company you're happy with, or you get a broker to price it out. And you can add $1 million of coverage. Now that does still cost more. What I see all the time is they have a $250, $500 deductible on their insurance that they wouldn't even file a claim for because of the potential of increased rates if it was at that amount or under. Most people probably don't care until it gets to about $1,000. Not all people. I mean, if you don't have any money in savings at all, well, you need a low deductible. But if you've got some savings, you can self-insure for some of that amount. So by raising the deductible and then adding the umbrella policy, you probably will have around the exact same premiums you're paying right now. And instead of having $100,000 of coverage, it'll be more like $1.1 million. Now, each person's different. Your circumstances are different. I'm just kind of giving an example of something typical that we see where there's inefficiency in the way that protection's structured. We see a lot of the same stuff with disability insurance. Many times people, number one, don't even recognize that there's a need for protection there. You're way more likely to get sick or hurt than to die. And if you couldn't work, think through what impact would that have? How long could you go before this was a major problem for your family? So you better look, if you've got some coverage through work, you better look and see what it is. I've seen people who are like, oh yeah, I'm covered through work. And we look at it and yeah, it covers 60% of your salary, but only to a maximum of $5,000 a month. Well, if you were making $10,000 a month and you're like most Americans, that's a problem. So number one, you need to see. Number two, you need to see how much you're self-insuring for. You were self-insured for. Don't just go out and buy the biggest policy you possibly can. Maybe you can self-insure for part of it. Maybe you could have, these are the things that you've got to think through. Do you need protection? Absolutely. But can you restructure? Same with health insurance. Do you have the opportunity to maybe go with a high deductible plan if you've got good health? And that might help. Yes, you've got to take on some burden. These are the types of things we're looking at. I do want to bring up, before I kind of continue going through the protection, we've got an upcoming event where we're going to focus more on the accumulation phase of money, and we're going to talk about the 7 deadly mistakes that investors make. We're going to be doing this on September 22nd. It's going to be at Perry's Steakhouse at 6:30 in the evening. This event is going to fill up fast. I know we've already got a bunch of people coming. So if you are interested in coming, you just need to text the keyword daddy to 72727. Text daddy to 72727. You'll receive an automated message that gives you information about how you can get your formal RSVP in, or just call us 713-826-0426, 713-826-0426. Email is bmbd@wealthdesigngroup.net, and make sure you're getting coming to that. So back to the protection items. We look at that. Life insurance is another one. How much are you paying for the, do you have the right amount of protection? Of course, you got to do that first. But then how much are you paying for it? There's all different kinds of carriers that offer different kinds of products. Are you just paying for term insurance? And then, so if you don't die within the term, that money is gone. Do you have some type of permanent plan? Can you get a refund of your premium? Can you recoup some of the costs? Those are the things that we look at when it comes to protection planning. So then we're going to get into the expenses and taxes. So again, the three major areas that we're looking at where we see the biggest wealth transfers that you need to have a full analysis done is the protection area, I just mentioned, expenses, and then taxes. So expenses, what are those? Well, number one is credit cards. Probably the biggest one that we see out there that people need to understand is mortgages, college education, and then cars. Financing a car, trading cars. How should you do that? Most people don't have a clue as to how they're going to handle expenses and ongoing planning in their financial matters. Student loans, so it could be education for your kids, or it could be you paying off the education that you already had. That's enabling you, of course, to have your wonderful job, I'm sure. So these are the things that we've got to, let's dive into each of them. Number one, let's just talk about debt. Overall, how should you handle debt? Well, there's short-term, high-interest debt, credit cards, right? So everybody probably knows the answer to that one. Pay them off. If you find, I see this too many times. People are like, oh, yeah, but I get the points. That's why I use it. Well, do you keep a balance month to month? Well, yeah, it kind of ends up that way because something pops up. Okay, if you find yourself continuing to carry a balance and you're getting hit with these huge interest charges, you're smiling, talking about your great return you got on your 401k at, you got 8%, and you didn't realize that out the back door you had 19.99% going to your credit card. So it just doesn't make sense. So you've got to actually come up with a plan that deals with the math of the issue, as well as you've got to be honest with yourself about the type of person you are when it comes to debt, because that high interest debt is terrible and you need a plan to eliminate it. And if you don't know, if you have debt and don't know when you're going to be debt free, you do not have a plan. You need to get with us and you need a plan. Period. The end. Now, when we talk about longer term debt, so maybe student loan debt or mortgages, it can get a little bit different. Okay. Let's take a mortgage, for instance. And in your mind, as you're listening, just try to determine, do you think you're better off with paying off your mortgage as quickly as possible, or having a long mortgage and just paying what you're supposed to on it? If you've ever gotten a mortgage, that they give you what's called a truth in lending statement. And when you get that statement, it shows you, if you like, let's pretend like you got a 30-year mortgage and you're buying a $350,000 house, and it's going to show you're probably going to pay almost that amount in interest over the next 30 years. Well, people are always like, well, that's crazy. Because, now you realize by getting this mortgage, not only were you building yourself a home, you were building the bank a home. Well, people don't like that, so they say, I'm going to make extra payments, or I'm going to do a 15-year note instead. And they do. You're right. You build less of a home for the bank by doing that, by paying that off sooner. What you also don't realize is now you're building a third home, which is called the Uncle Sam home, because the home interest deduction's one of the few deductions left. And by the way, that gets phased out as your income goes higher and higher, but it's at least, even if it's something's better than nothing, of course. You can't really find deductions in these days. And I'm going to talk about that in the last segment. Where are there true deductions? Because a lot of times people tell me, well, my retirement plan, that's tax deductible. It's really tax deferred. We'll get into that, all right? But your home interest, it's deductible. You deduct it, and I'm by no means a CPA, so it depends on certain circumstances, but you deduct it and you walk away from it. So by paying it off early, you might be getting rid of some of your tax deductions, and so that's an issue. We'll talk about that as we get into the last segment, but we're pushing here on a break, and I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that if you haven't put this type of planning together, just call us. We'll set up a webinar, a face-to-face meeting, whatever works for you. 713-826-0426. And if you are interested in learning more about our live coaching events, the next one, we're going to be discussing the 7 deadly mistakes that investors make. You got to know them. All you need to do is text the keyword DADDY to 72727. You can reach us. Big money, Big Daddy.